If this message has reached you today, it is not by chance. There are moments in life when the heart perceives a truth long before the mind can fully grasp it. This steady, persistent feeling, this deep knowing that lingers and refuses to leave your thoughts, has a purpose and a reason. Life is attempting to communicate something connected to this story, this bond, and a choice that can no longer be postponed. This is not meant to scare you, nor to threaten. It is about a truth that must be acknowledged now, before staying silent causes more pain than any words could. The confusion can feel overwhelming. There are days when everything seems cold for no clear reason, when the emotional and physical distance between people grows. Then subtle signs appear, memories, small actions, sparks that awaken a fire never fully extinguished. This push and pull is not imagined. It reflects an inner struggle, not of the person reading this, but of the other side of the connection. There is a conflict between pride and emotion, between fear of vulnerability and the need to face truth. The universe and the energy around us perceives what the human eye cannot. Deep longings are felt in solitude. Hidden fears are noticed. Words rehearsed in the mirror remain unspoken. Decisions are delayed due to lack of courage, because accepting a true commitment often means embracing a major life change. Change is naturally frightening. To love authentically requires relinquishing control, dismantling walls built over years, and stepping into unknown paths. Pretending not to care is no longer an option. Doubts may arise, whether the connection is real or a dream, whether expectations are too high, whether it's genuine or just a desire for companionship. These uncertainties can exhaust the heart, creating the sensation of giving more than receiving, waiting with what feels like endless patience. Yet, it is crucial to approach this with calmness. When a bond is genuine, born from depth and authenticity, it does not disappear with time or distance. Instead, it evolves and is tested, stretched to its limits but never erased. If someone attempts to run from what is real, life ensures they must confront it. A breaking point approaches for the person who walks away, not a destructive break, but a necessary unveiling of the masks they wear. At some point, pretending the bond does not matter becomes impossible. The emptiness left by absence outweighs the fear of commitment. This is when unexpected events begin, not through magic, but because the soul can no longer hide what has been screaming in silence. This message is not urging you to force outcomes. Life does not ask you to chase, push, or exhaust yourself trying to win someone over. What is required is observation, trust, and above all, alignment with your intuition. Choosing from inner truth brings clarity. Choosing out of fear or worry stalls progress. Two paths now lie ahead. One is to keep doubting your feelings, minimizing signs, and convincing yourself it's safer to walk away before being hurt. This path seems logical, but it gradually distances you from what is meant to grow. The other path is to stand with dignity, not begging for attention or forcing encounters, but also not closing your heart. This involves remaining in a space of self-respect and faith, letting the other person follow their journey. The outcome of this approach is clarity. The alternative is repeating painful cycles, the same stories, the same voids, the same unanswered questions. Life repeats lessons not to punish, but to teach. It knows there is a vast capacity for love within you, yet also a tendency to tolerate more than you should. This is the comfort that needs to reach you today. You are not alone on this journey. You are not imagining the events that unfold. Quiet movements have already begun. Inner choices that may not yet appear in the physical world but are present in the energy around you. Life isn't rushed, yet it never stops. When the perfect moment comes, everything aligns in ways the logical mind cannot predict. Some people feel loss even when surrounded by others. They sense the risk of losing connection even while appearing safe. Souls connected on a deeper level aren't simply replaced. They recognize each other. And when one tries to escape, life repeatedly presents the same name, memory, and feeling. It is crucial to observe your body and emotions, not out of fear for immediate results, but for the peace that comes from knowing what is unfolding is not a fleeting impulse, but a truth that has been quietly growing. Once the uncertainty ends, you will see why nothing happened sooner, why the lonely path was necessary, and why waiting was part of the process. To understand why someone distances themselves from something they deeply desire, we must first examine the battle within their shadow side, a struggle that mind experts have studied for over a century. This reveals the real reason behind their confusing behavior. If you are ready to bring this lesson into your life, comment that you trust your gut. To truly grasp why pulling away happens when the bond feels strongest, we must look beneath the surface. Thinkers like Carl Jung, who studied the human mind, provide detailed insights into the heart and mind of someone who chooses to step back. It is not due to a lack of love or care, but a complex mental and spiritual process called the mirror effect and confronting the shadow. Understanding this is key to stop taking distance personally and begin seeing it as a wake-up call. When two people share such a profound connection, it acts like a perfect mirror. A mirror doesn't judge, it reflects everything with clarity. In this bond, the other person sees not only the love and care offered, but also their own vulnerabilities, unhealed fears, and unresolved wounds. Jung explained that what we fail to face internally manifests externally. Thus, someone who offers complete love and acceptance can feel intimidating to those who haven't yet learned to love themselves. This is where the shadow comes in. The shadow represents the hidden or denied parts of ourselves, those we conceal out of fear of rejection. These may include deep insecurities, feelings of inadequacy, or the fear of abandonment. When love touches these areas, the ego instinctively protects itself. The person doesn't flee from love itself, they flee from the emotions this love brings to the surface. They run from the vulnerability of showing their true self without masks or defenses. The connection is so luminous that it exposes corners they prefer to keep in darkness. This sparks instability, creating confusion. One day, the desire for closeness prevails, bringing hope and intimacy. The next day, the fear of being fully seen overtakes them, triggering withdrawal. It's a cycle. They want you near, yet push you away because your light is overwhelming. It's essential to recognize that this behavior is not a judgment on the worth of the one who waits, but a reflection of the fears of the one who runs. This person is quietly battling between surrendering to the bond and protecting their sense of self and control over their heart. Accepting real love requires a level of courage that not everyone possesses at the same time. It involves letting go of control, lowering your defenses, and stepping into a space where you can no longer pretend that everything is fine when it is not. This can feel intimidating because truly loving someone means leaving yourself vulnerable. You may wonder if you are making things appear better than they are, if your expectations are too high, or if the connection is genuine. That uncertainty can be painful because it exhausts the heart to feel like you are giving more, feeling more, and waiting more. But it is essential to approach this with a calm mindset. When a connection comes from a place of deep truth, it does not disappear, it evolves. A common mistake at this stage is trying to force closeness, believing that proving love repeatedly can fix the other person's fears. Yet, from the perspective of this inner mirror, the more you pursue, the larger the reflection of fear appears to the other person. If someone is afraid of their own inner darkness, they will naturally step back to feel safe. Unintentionally, your pursuit is perceived as pressure to confront something they are not ready to face. The push and pull in these moments is not random. It reflects an internal struggle that affects both parties, a battle between pride and love, between running and staying, and between risking happiness or facing personal shadows. Life notices what the eye cannot, the late nights spent thinking about the connection, the unspoken fears, the carefully rehearsed words never shared, the slowed decisions. Accepting love also requires accepting change, and this is where the barrier forms. Interestingly, distance is often a sign of how much the bond matters. If the connection were insignificant, there would be no need to retreat because nothing would be at risk. Walls are built around what we value and fear losing. The temporary space someone creates is a safe spot to repair their inner world, which has been stirred by the emergence of love. As they try to regain control, they felt slipping away. In these moments, pride functions as a vigilant guard. Admitting need or recognizing mistakes requires the ego to surrender, and the ego will resist fiercely to survive. This explains seemingly contradictory behavior. Sudden coldness or prolonged silence is rarely a lack of care. It is a mask the ego wears to buy time while the soul continues moving toward truth. As Joseph observed, we do not find light by imagining brightness, but by confronting darkness. Love of this depth compels someone to acknowledge their own shadows, whether they want to or not. The doubt that arises from confusing or inconsistent behavior is painful, but it is important to remember that when someone attempts to avoid reality, life ensures they face it. At some point, the act of pretending the connection does not matter becomes impossible because the emptiness outweighs the fear. It is at this threshold that transformation occurs, not because everything is suddenly fixed, but because the soul can no longer tolerate the imbalance. The goal is not to break the mirror or polish it for the other person, but to allow it to reflect truth naturally by remaining centered yourself. By neither chasing nor retreating, you give the other person the opportunity to confront their darkness without feeling attacked. You create a space where fear can gradually turn into curiosity and eventually acceptance. Trusting that their inner work is happening, even without immediate results, is an act of profound faith. This is precisely where most people go wrong, attempting to force progress or seeking logical explanations for something that is guided by feelings and spirit. In doing so, they prevent the other person from experiencing their own void, from realizing the value of the connection, and from discovering on their own what they might be losing. For any return to be genuine and lasting, it must arise from freedom and the other person's own awareness, not from persistent pursuit. For this to occur, something significant must first be experienced. This is the essence of the physics of being gone. Understanding how avoidance works is only the first step. Once you recognize that their distance is not about you personally, but a defensive response to a reality that feels too intense, the question becomes, how should you respond? The answer does not lie in chasing or convincing them, but in a far older and more powerful principle that governs all things, the physics of energy and the law of empty space. Human connections operate with an invisible precision, as exact as gravity. When you learn to align with this law rather than resist it, the dynamics of interaction transform entirely. Until now, natural habits may have pushed you to check on them, attempt to fix things, seek explanations, or simply remain present so you're not forgotten. This is a typical human response. When something valuable seems to be slipping away, the instinct is to pursue it. Yet, in energetic terms, this very pursuit produces the opposite outcome. Imagine the connection as a rope linking two ends. If one side pulls forcefully, trying to bring the other closer, the natural reaction of the other side is to pull away to maintain balance. As long as there is a force chasing, there will always be a force resisting. This is where the physics of being gone comes into play. When your attention was fully on them, sending messages, observing their actions, or spending hours thinking about them, you inadvertently fueled their ego and sense of security. The one who distances themselves experiences a position of power and ease. They know someone is waiting, providing a safety net. This assurance allows them to stay away without feeling the real weight of solitude. The energy you provide acts like fuel, letting them continue without fatigue, shielded from the fear of loss. But what occurs when this energy source is removed? When you redirect your focus, not as a tactic, not as punishment, but as an act of self-love and preservation, a profound shift happens. By letting go of the rope, the opposing force loses its purpose. The energy sustaining their distance suddenly collapses, and they lose balance. Those who were running now find themselves in an empty space with no one pursuing them. And in this emptiness, true silence arrives. This silence is more than the absence of noise or messages. It is a real energy gap. Nature, as science teaches us, resists emptiness and seeks to fill it. When the energy that supported the other person disappears, a void forms. Initially, they may feel a fleeting relief, believing they've regained space. But this relief quickly fades, replaced by a strange unease, then deep concern. They notice an inexplicable coldness, a lack of vitality in their daily life, as if a light or warmth that once guided them had been turned off. In this empty space, the mind of the one who left begins to operate differently. Without an external threat to guard against, mental energy that was previously spent on avoidance is freed. Interest awakens. They wonder why the pursuit has stopped, whether the attention has disappeared, or whether they've lost the unwavering support they once assumed was permanent. Doubt. Once the burden of the one who waited, now shifts to the one who left. It's crucial to recognize that this process doesn't happen overnight, but it is inevitable. By reclaiming your focus, you return full responsibility for their emotions to the other person. Previously, one person carried the fear of loss. Now, that weight returns to its rightful owner. The other individual must confront the entirety of the separation without anything to soften the impact. They face the reality of their life without the constant warmth and support they once relied on. True value emerges in contrast. No one appreciates air until it starts to run out. Similarly, the depth of a connection is often unnoticed until its absence becomes real, not just a distant threat. For this shift to be effective, the pullback must be genuine. Stopping outward expressions like writing is meaningless if your mind is still fixated, silently calling out that person's name. Energy cannot lie, and the hidden connection conveys the truth of your feelings. The reality of absence demands focus to fully shift. It requires returning to your own center, nurturing yourself, and growing. When the energy changes from neediness to self-sufficiency, the signal sent to both the world and the other person is one of pride and high value. Nothing is more magnetic than someone who feels complete on their own and doesn't have to beg for love to feel whole. At this point, the other person may experience what can be called energy loss. They might attempt small gestures, like sending mixed signals or briefly showing up, not as genuine attempts to return, but as checks to see if the connection still exists. Standing firm and not reacting to these crumbs amplifies the effect. The proof that things have truly changed creates a new tension. The safe ground they once relied on is gone. Now they must stabilize themselves or find a way to repair a bridge they helped burn. This energy gap acts as a louder truth. Without the noise of pursuit or drama, the essence of the bond remains. If the connection is genuine, silence will not destroy it. Rather, it will make its presence more apparent. Physical absence shifts from relief to quiet pain. The other person begins to feel an internal urge to restore the link, not because they are forced, but because their own soul craves the energy they previously turned away from. They realize the freedom they sought feels hollow without the one who gave it meaning. It is a fragile yet powerful moment. The balance evens out, no chaser, no chased, just two individuals confronting their truths in quiet. By maintaining this inward focus without external actions, the foundation is being prepared for the next phase. If the silence grows too intense and the ego no longer gets its usual feed, the person may seek distractions, external noise to quiet internal unrest. However, when a connection is soulful, no substitute can satisfy the heart for long. When the pursuit ends, a quiet but challenging stage begins for the one who distanced themselves. Distractions no longer work. Initially, their response is often avoidance rather than surrender. When faced with hard truths or painful loss, the mind naturally seeks ways to numb the discomfort. At this stage, the other person may immerse themselves in work, social activity, or shallow pleasures to prove to themselves that they can manage without the deep link, and that leaving was the right choice. But this is also when a necessary realization occurs. If the bond is real, attempts to replace it elsewhere hit an invisible barrier. Life allows them to explore other paths and connect with new energies, not to harm anyone but to reveal the vast difference between superficial experiences and a soulful link. Every attempt to replace you highlights the loss. They may meet new people or engage in conversations with intentions of love, yet they will notice something unsettling. The interactions feel hollow, lacking depth and flow. The spark that exists naturally in a soul connection cannot be replicated elsewhere. This person finds themselves sitting across from someone, perhaps someone who, on paper, seems perfect, a good partner in every way. Yet, they feel a quiet boredom they cannot shake. They notice they have to force laughter. They feel the need to explain their thoughts too much. The effortless comfort of simply understanding each other, the kind where a single look says everything, is missing. What initially seemed like a fun and enjoyable connection slowly becomes a subtle kind of torture. Comparing becomes inevitable, and it starts to feel unfair to the new person. Every trait of this new partner highlights the qualities of the bond they left behind. The shallowness of others makes the depth of the connection they tried to forget shine even brighter. Excuses they once told themselves to justify leaving start to sound hollow. They said they needed space, that they needed freedom, that maybe someone easier or better was out there. But the real world shows that easy often equals empty, and freedom can feel like wandering in a desert. They attempt to convince themselves that time will heal all wounds, but distance and unfavorable comparisons sharpen the memory instead of dulling it. They realize that losing this bond isn't a normal loss. It's a deep cut that neither fun nor fleeting connections can heal. When external distractions fade, silence returns with more intensity. This begins what spiritual paths call the dark night of the soul, yet it is tailored for the mind that resists. It's a period of inner crisis, where defenses fall. Sleep becomes elusive. Nights stretch long, filled with replayed conversations, moments of safety, and moments of fear that made them withdraw. They start questioning their own story. They can no longer blame timing or the other person. Alone with their feelings, they confront fears their pride once shielded. The pride that once guarded them now feels like a cage. They feel a pull to reach out, to call, to reconnect. And yet it is in this quiet exhaustion that transformation begins. When the ego can no longer bear the weight of its lies, something real and honest emerges. A desire for peace, not for control, not for victory, but for calm within the heart, rises. The suppressed longing becomes undeniable, a clear understanding that no one else, no distraction, no escape, can fill the void left by the bond they ran from. Painful as it may be, this realization marks the start of being ready to open up again. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, energy begins to shift, thoughts soften. The heart lowers its walls, not because fear has vanished, but because understanding has grown. The real danger is not being near the loved one, but living without them. In this quiet surrender comes the first genuine impulse to return, not out of loneliness, not out of regret, but from the deep knowing that what was once avoided is exactly what is needed for wholeness. And on that fine line between fear and courage, the heart finally moves, following what the soul has long known.